There's this idea at the heart of our country, which is if you're working and doing something for your family or your community, you shouldn't live in poverty.
Can you walk us through how you see the importance of guaranteed income and how you think it should work?
That the economy that we live in today is fundamentally unfair, where a small group of people get very, very lucky, and everybody else who's working really hard can't make ends meet. The best solution in this case is also the simplest, providing every working American who makes less than $50,000 $500 a month, no strings attached. And I believe in it for a couple reasons. One is because of the evidence. There's a ton of evidence to know that when people get money, they spend it on generally responsible things. Their kids stay in school longer, they're healthier. And the second reason is really just a question of fundamental ideology. I think that people should have the freedom to chase their own dreams. And cash isn't some kind of cure-all that makes everything possible, but it is the first step. What's required to be able to pay for gas money to go interview for a job or for a babysitter for your kids so that you can figure out what you want to invest your time and your energy in.
Can you walk through how you started realizing that something so simple was where you believed the country needed to go?
Well, it was really two things. I've had what at first I felt like was a really unique life experience where we started Facebook and it exploded and I made a boatload of money at a relatively young age for a very modest amount of work. I mean, in the book, I talk about 3 years worth of work leading to $500 million and how crazy that is. And then over time, I realized that my story, while it might be extreme, isn't really all that unique. That a lot of the people who are having really major economic success in our economy are working hard, but they're also getting very lucky.
Well, I thought one of the most interesting parts about the idea is that if you give people even the small amount of money, it would not be a small amount of money if you were dependent on it, that $500 it enables you to make better decisions.
I was talking to a woman in Cleveland last year, and I was asking a question that, to be honest, I get asked quite a bit, which is, how much is $100 or $500? How much of a difference is that really going to make in your life? And she looked at me and she locked eyes with me and she said, anybody who's asking that question has never had to choose at the end of the month between making rent and buying groceries. And we were in a big group conversation. Nobody said a word after that.
There's been a lot of talk of universal basic income, especially coming from Silicon Valley. It gets tied up with the question of automation and artificial intelligence and jobs all going away.
My perspective on this is that the future's already here. We don't need to know when the self-driving cars are going to arrive or if robots are going to take the jobs to know that income inequality in the United States is worse now than it has been since 1929, the year the Great Depression started. And so my view is that a guaranteed income is the most powerful tool that we have to fight back against the income inequality that exists in our country. Back in the early 70s, Richard Nixon actually favored a guaranteed income, got past the House of Representatives, failed in the Senate, and two things emerged from it. One is we have a small guaranteed income in the United States for elderly and the disabled called Social Security Disability Insurance. And the second is the Earned Income Tax Credit, which every single president, Republican and Democrat alike, has expanded since it was created in 1975. So there's a lot of precedent for bipartisan appeal for the idea.
Would you talk about the tech industry and the economy? You talk a lot about the gig economy.
There are good things about the gig economy. There's no doubt. I think for the most part, though, work used to mean something to most Americans. It used to mean basic stability. And I think today, a job for many Americans really just means a gig, really just means contingent kind of work where some weeks you might have a lot of income, some weeks you have none. You likely don't have benefits, certainly not a retirement account. So my view isn't necessarily, okay, how do we go backwards? I don't think that's practical. Instead, how do we adapt to the future and make sure that all those folks who are working in gigs and the independent contractor economy also have financial stability?
In order to get this guaranteed income, you don't actually have to work in a traditional job or in a gig job.
I think it's important that when we talk about work, we're not just talking about work in the formal economy, we're also recognizing a lot of the work that's happened at home, domestically, in communities, in schools, that we have not recognized as work. So in the book, I talk about childcare. If you're if you're a mom or a dad taking care of a young kid, cleaning clothes, working around the clock, you are working. You may not be getting paid for it, but you are doing something for yourself, for your family. Students are working, and that's not recognized. The baby boomer generation who's taking care of elders, there's a lot of studies that show how much time and effort those folks are working too. So I think my point is we have to, if we're going to be honest, we have to expand the definition of work to recognize trillions of dollars of economic activity, which has been happening forever, for decades, and not just, consign ourselves to a more narrow view. It's a big idea. A lot of people think it's a crazy one, but you know what? I think it's the right thing for the country, and whether it's crazy or not, I want to work on it.